Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to the Water Policy and Legislation Committee and special meeting of the Board of Directors for the West Basin Municipal Water District. I am calling this meeting to order. And do we have a quorum, Mr. General Manager? Please call the roll.
Director Don Deere. Here. Chairwoman Gloria Gray.
Here.
Director Scott Houston. Director Tommy Favai. Here. Director Desi Alvarez. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Item 3, public comment. Do we have anyone from the public who wishes to speak?
Madam Chair, we have not received any requests prior to this meeting for public comment, though this meeting is being held both in person and virtually. If there's any member of the public that would like to speak, please indicate so by raising your virtual hand. And Madam Chair, I do not see a request for public comment.
Okay, thank you. Item 4, presentations. Do we have any presentations?
There are no presentations for today.
Okay, thank you. Action calendar 5. Could you please introduce 5A, Mr. General Manager?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Item 5A is to approve the 2026 annual water supply and demand assessment. It's important to note that this assessment is required by law and is required for West Basin to submit this to the California Department of Water Resources by the end of this month. As such, West Basin wanted to provide the board an overview of this effort with a final presentation at the June board meeting. So for this presentation, we do have Augustine Hong from our Water Policy and Resources Development Analyst. And we also have Michael Steele from Water Systems Consulting, who provide a little bit of assistance on both 5A and 6A. So with that, I'm happy to hand it off to Augustine.
Thank you, EJ. Chair Gray, as EJ mentioned, the item before you is the annual water supply demand assessment. The report begins on packet page 3, but the slides are included in the handout. And so I'll direct your attention to the slides on the screen. If we could move on to the next slide, please. I'll just provide a brief overview of the annual water supply demand assessment. As EJ mentioned, it is a requirement under the Making Conservation a California Way of Life legislation. West Basin's Urban Water Management Plan and Water Shortage Contingency Plan specifies the procedures for conducting this annual water supply demand assessment. And under state law, urban water suppliers are required to submit an annual shortage report to DWR by July 1 of each year. The key questions posed in this assessment are, does a shortage condition exist in the following fiscal year? And also, if so, what actions will the supplier take to address this shortage? Board and customer agency feedback helps inform the final version of this report. And so we'd be happy to take any input from this committee and any board members. We could move on to the next slide, please. I can just talk a little bit about the process to get us here today. On April 8th, DWR held its informational meeting reviewing the procedures. On May 2nd, staff attended the Metropolitan Coordination meeting. At that meeting, Metropolitan assured all of its member agencies that imported water demands in the next fiscal year will be met. I apologize for the slide. It should say fiscal year 27. And so on June 10th, at our quarterly water resiliency work group meeting, staff informed all of our retail agencies that West Basin expects to meet all customer agency imported water demands for fiscal year 27. Next slide, please. And so as far as next steps, we're happy to take any feedback from any committee members here today. We'll also consider any other needed changes for the final draft, and we'll be bringing that final report before the board at the board meeting on June 22nd. And then we'll seek approval then, and then submit all the required paperwork to DWR by July 1st. So that's the game plan. Just wanted to provide this information to the committee here today. That concludes the update.
Thank you for the update. Are there any questions, Director Deere? Any questions?
No questions.
Anyone else?
Harvey?
No questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation. Director Deere, are you okay with moving it forward with the recommendation?
Madam Chair, if you wouldn't mind, I would suggest that we move this to the board without a recommendation and do a presentation there, because we'll have the full report at that time. And that way we can deliver the full presentation.
All right, Director Deere, is that okay?
Fine, it's fine with me.
Yes, that's fine with me. EJ, that's fine. So we will
Okay.
move it with the presentation and a full presentation at the board meeting. All right, thank you. Item 6, information calendar. EJ, would you please introduce the information calendar?
Yes, Madam Chair, and this item is somewhat similar. Item 6A is the West Basin's 2025 Urban Water Management Plan and Water Shortage Contingency Plan. Again, this is required to be approved by the West Basin Board of Directors and ultimately submitted to the state. And with that in mind, we have provided notice for a public hearing at our board meeting. So this will be one of those action items that will be required. With that in mind, we wanted to provide the committee today a full presentation of what we'll see at the board meeting to give you a good idea. And that way, if you have any questions or comments when we're in that hearing at the end of the month, we'll all be ready to kind of answer those questions and receive them. So again, we have Augustine Hahn, our Water Policy and Resource Development Analyst. And this item begins on packet page 6.
Thank you, EJ. Chair Gray, board members. EJ referenced the agenda report that begins on page 6, and the slides will begin on page 11. But before we move over the slides, I just wanted to provide a brief introduction. In September 2025, the West Basin Board authorized an agreement with Water Systems Consulting, who Michael represents here today, to complete a regional partnership to complete the 2025 Urban Water Management Plan. And so as part of that regional partnership, West Basin partnered with the City of Inglewood, City of Lomita, and the City of Manhattan Beach. This partnership builds on West Basin's history of providing resources to its customer retail agencies, the agencies that ultimately delivered the water to residents and businesses within our service area. This process allowed for a single consultant to conduct planning concurrently, which helped streamline required interagency coordination to complete 4 separate urban water management documents for each of the agencies. And so to go over the plan in a little more detail, Michael Steele from WSC will be giving the presentation.
Great. Thanks, Augustine. Good afternoon, Chair Gray, board members, staff, members of the public. Thanks so much for the opportunity to provide a brief overview of the Urban Water Management Plan today. As Augustine said, my name is Michael Steele. I'm a water resources engineer with WSC, a consulting engineering firm who helped your staff to prepare the Urban Water Management Plan this year. And I did want to go ahead and acknowledge the great work of your staff, as well as the coordination and collaboration with your customer agencies, without whom it wouldn't have been possible to get this done. So there were a lot of benefits there. Okay, next slide. So as you all know, West Basin's mission is to provide safe and reliable supply of high quality water to the communities you serve. And this development of an urban water management plan is one of those rhythms that the district undertakes to fulfill its mission. Next slide. And so the district is a wholesale water supplier that provides water to 9 customer agencies and 12 water systems, serving over 880,000 people in 17 cities, as well as across unincorporated Los Angeles County. And then West Basin is also a major recycled water producer, serving over 500 customer sites with recycled water. Next slide. And so all water suppliers are required by California Water Code to update an urban water management plan every 5 years. And these plans provide an overview of projected demands. They also evaluate the reliability of water supplies, and they provide a framework for a drought response through a water shortage contingency plan. And also the development of these plans is a great opportunity to coordinate with other water suppliers, as well as seek input from stakeholders and the public. Next slide. And so to encourage that public feedback, the district sent out notices of preparation in March. And then notification of the upcoming public hearing was published in local newspapers at the end of May, as well as the beginning of June. The draft plan was published to the West Basin website for public review, and the public hearing is scheduled for June 22nd. Next slide. And so here, this graph shows an overview of both water demands and supplies within West Basin service area. So on the left-hand side, you see demands. Those include retail, municipal, and industrial. So those are your retail agencies meeting the demands of their end users, as well as seawater barrier demands from Water Replenishment District to prevent seawater intrusion. And then on the right side, you see the different supply types that are used to meet those demands, as well as those paths connecting which supplies are typically used for which demands. And so those numbers that you see and the size of those bars are scaled based on average annual deliveries and acre feet over the past 5 years. And so on that right-hand supply side, you see at the top groundwater, and that's used to meet some of the demand within the service area. And so that's pumped by your local pumpers within the service area. And then supplies available to the district include imported water and recycled water. And then I'll also note here, there's a sliver along the bottom as well, where West Basin provides recycled water to customers outside of the service area as well. I wanted to note that, but somewhat outside of the scope of this plan. Okay, next slide. Okay, and so one of the first components of developing these plans is we analyze this historical data and look at trends and then start to develop future projections. And so as we all know, there's uncertainty inherent anytime we're trying to predict the future. And so on the demand side of things, some of that uncertainty comes about through the assumptions that we have to make around changes in population trends over time, as well as impacts of regulations, both those that are in place now, as well as potential future regulations that may happen in the future, and also the impacts of continued conservation. There's been a long history of a lot of progress in conservation, and that's a continuing thing as new plumbing codes are implemented and new developments and things like that. So some of those uncertainty there. So what we did as a project team was we looked at multiple different scenarios, and when we make different assumptions, what does that result in? And then the urban water management plan requires really a single projection of the future. And so we looked at this kind of range of scenarios and then chose a projection based on the best available information at this time. And then on the supply side, there's several large regional projects that are in the planning phases currently that could have a major impact to the future supplies of West Basin. And I wanted to note that these are discussed in the plan and an overview is provided, but they're not quantitatively included in the supply projections for the district due to their uncertain timing and implementation period as of now. Okay, next slide. And so here you see a graph of total water demand over time. And so on the left-hand side of that graph are the historical demands for the past 25 years. And on the right side of that graph is the selected projection scenario for future demands. And those demands are made up of two different categories. You see the majority of that is I think it's labeled on the slide, but it's that those retail demands are shown in that navy blue. And then the brown on the top is the seawater barrier demands over time. And you can see those demands are anticipated to increase a little bit over the past couple of years, but largely remain flat throughout the planning horizon. Next slide. As we mentioned, some of the supplies within West Basin service area are met with groundwater pumped by local pumpers. And you can see over the past 5 years, significant progress has been made in increasing the amount of groundwater pumped by local agencies. And we expect this trend to continue as retailers have invested and pumpers in general have invested in their groundwater supplies. So whether that's bringing new treatment projects online, constructing new wells so that they can pump additional groundwater. And we expect that to continue to tick up closer to that dashed line at the top, which is the total adjudicated pumping rights from the basin. And then that utilization of local groundwater really helps to reduce the reliance on imported water. Okay, next slide. And then obviously recycled water is another major source of supply in the district service area. And so you can see in different colors, different where this recycled water is going to. Some of that obviously for seawater barrier demands to prevent seawater intrusion and recharge the groundwater basin. Also to meet municipal non-potable demands like irrigation or industrial uses. Okay, next slide. And so then when we take our total demand and we subtract out local supplies of groundwater and of recycled water, what we're left with is imported water projections. So this is the largest amount of projected future water use. But you can see that there's been a significant decline over time in imported water use. And we project that that overall trend will continue, although at a flatter rate over time. And then I'll also note on here, we have a kind of a gray line where you can see the imported water projections for the service area developed in Metropolitan's urban water management plan. And so I point that out to note that there's a bit of a factor of safety or a buffer there where the projected imported water demands are lower than those projected by Metropolitan. And we'll talk about that in a little bit when we talk about reliability. Okay, next slide. And so then here we put it all together, and I know this is a little small, but we're putting all of those demands onto one graph with different colors relating the supplies that are meeting those demands. And there's 3 dotted lines. The lowest of those dotted lines is West Basin's potable demand and that projection over time. And then that second middle dotted line is total West Basin demand, where we add in that recycled water. And then that top one adds in groundwater to get our total service area demand over time. Okay, next slide. And so obviously imported water was a big chunk of that and plays a key factor. And so something that's really important is Metropolitan's projections in their urban water management plan. And they project high reliability of their imported water supplies and being able to meet West Basin's demands, along with all of their other member agencies. And that's through a mix of their integrated use of Colorado River supplies, state water project supplies, and also their investment in storage and transfer programs over the years, allowing them to meet those demands even in drier years where 1 or 2 of those supplies might be lower. Okay, next. And so a reliability analysis, using that information from Metropolitan, as well as incorporating reliability of other West Basin supplies, was conducted as a part of this plan. And so we looked at what are the ability of West Basin supplies to meet demands over a few different year type scenarios. And the result of that analysis is that West Basin projects to have sufficient supplies to meet demands under all of the different year types that were evaluated, both in normal years, a single dry year, as well as a multi-year drought. And this is really some of the key factors in doing that are due to West Basin's diversified supply and conservation measures, as well as Metropolitan's supply reliability investments that they make. And so then as a result, there's no anticipated shortages under all of those different year types throughout the planning horizon. Okay, next slide. And so another key component of an urban water management plan is a water shortage contingency plan, which, as I mentioned, is essentially a framework for a drought scenario. And so it allows the district to plan ahead and have essentially a roadmap, a framework for what to do in case of that scenario. And so I'll note that there were no major updates from the 2020 water shortage contingency plan. So really all that's in here, but I just wanted to provide a brief overview of what's included in that. Next slide. And so actually, next slide as well. Yeah, so I just want to highlight the relationship between kind of a feature of these plans is their interconnected nature between Metropolitan as well as your retailers, and all of these. I think it really emphasizes the need for that ongoing communication and coordination between agencies where there are impacts from each different agency's assessment of their conditions and any sort of plan. Okay, next slide. Also included in the water shortage contingency plan is the process or the procedures for the annual water supply and demand assessment, which Augustine just presented in the last item. And so that process began in 2022 after the last urban water management plan was finalized. And really this takes all of this planning work and looks at it on an annual basis and says, okay, we have this long-term planning document, but what are we looking at for the next, for this next year? Is there a need to declare a shortage and the resulting actions that are associated with that to try to reduce demands? Okay, next slide. And West Basin's water shortage contingency plan follows the state standard kind of 6 levels of shortages, where each of those have different actions associated with these different targets of trying to reduce, each about an additional 10% of demands in case you need to. Next slide. And so then I wanted to, really highlight one of the last sections then of the urban water management plan. It highlights the award-winning conservation and outreach program that West Basin implements. And this is a huge contributor to that resiliency that we saw in the reliability analysis, and a big support to all of your retail agencies as well, helping to reduce water waste and reduce imported water dependency, and also increase water resiliency. And so a component of the urban water management plan is quantifying some of the impacts of that have occurred over the past 5 years and providing that information also to your retailers. Okay, next slide. And so then just an overview of the key findings from the urban water management plan. Number one, that supplies are anticipated to be sufficient to meet demands under the assumptions and analysis of the plan. And then second, that's in large part thanks to the district's investments to diversify and augment your water supply portfolio, and that's reduced a reliance on imported water. And then thirdly, for that imported water component of your supplies, Metropolitan is projecting sufficient supplies to meet imported water demands. And I think with that, I will turn it back over to Augustine, but available to answer any questions. Also, my colleague Rob Morrow is online as well. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, and before we field any questions, just wanted to remind you that staff is presenting this item before the public hearing and board adoption on June 22nd. And yeah, happy to take any of your questions or any of the feedback that you might have.
And Madam Chair, if I could just add one aspect of this, as was mentioned by Michael, we've been working with all of our retail agencies as they'll be going through the same adoption process. So our municipal utilities, including the city of Inglewood, El Segundo, Manhattan Beach, and Lomita, they'll be hosting those public hearings this week, tomorrow. And so they'll be going through this exact same process that we'll be going through later this month. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
All right, thank you very much for your presentation. Director Deere, do you have any questions?
No, very good report.
Director Provide?
Great job on the presentation. Look forward to it.
All right. I don't think any other directors are there. I don't have any questions. I think it was a very thorough report, so thank you very much. We'll go to the next item, please.
Yes, Madam Chair, the next item is item 6B. It's our monthly state and federal legislative update. For the presentation, we have Augustine Hahn, our Water Policy and Resources Development Analyst.
Thank you, EJ. Directors, I will direct your attention to the handouts where we have the slides. And just for your reference, the state report can be found also in the handouts. And the federal report can be found on page 35 of the packet. So we'll move on to the first slide, please. Just to provide a brief overview of the legislative session that's currently going on. June 25th will be the last day for the legislature for legislative measures to qualify for the general election ballot. June 15th is the constitutional deadline for legislature to pass a budget bill. And then on July 2nd will be the last day for policy committees to meet and pass bills. And that's also will kick off the summer recess where legislature will come back and reconvene on August 3rd. Next slide, please. We'll provide a brief overview of the gubernatorial primary election. And so Javier Becerra and Steve Hilton will be headed to the general election runoff in November. Becerra, at last count, had about 28% of the vote, with Steve Hilton having about 25%. Becerra is expected to be a heavy favorite, and you can find additional information about the general election in the Sacramento update in the agenda packet. Next slide, please. Just wanted to provide a brief summary of other primary election results. So as far as the congressional seats, the Prop 50 congressional seats, Representative Gallagher in Congressional District 1 won the special election to complete Representative LaMalfa's term, but faces Mike McGuire, the State Senate Pro Tem Emeritus, in the runoff. Also, I'll just note that a majority of the Prop 50 seats will see a Dem versus a Republican in the runoff in November. There were two races, one that had two Democrats against each other, and then another with two Republicans facing off. As far as congressional seats within the West Basin service area, there will be runoffs to replace both Representative Brownlee in Congressional District 26, with Jackie Irwin taking on a Republican, and to replace Sherman in Congressional District 32, where we'll have a runoff between a Democrat and a Republican. For the state Senate, the contest to fill State Senator Ben Allen's seat is remarkably close. Among the 10 candidates, candidate Erickson leads narrowly with 20.5% of the vote, trailed closely by candidate Goldsmith at 18.5%, and candidate Marshall, a Republican, at 17.5%, leaving the runoff spots very much up for grabs. One item of note is that an estimated $8.8 million in outside spending on the race was something that was closely watched, and also could have impacted other races where that state Senate district may have overlapped. At the California Assembly, there are races to replace termed out Assembly members Mike Gibson and Murat Suchi. And so both of those races will head into November with a runoff between a Democrat and a Republican. At the County Board of Supervisor level, Maria Durazo will be replacing Supervisor Hilda Solis in District 1. Both of the candidates actually received over 50% of the vote, and so they've won their elections. That other person, that other supervisor is Lindsay Horvath, who was reelected to District 3. As far as the city of Los Angeles, we'll see Mayor Karen Bass and Nithya Raman advancing to the runoff in November. And also some other elections of note, Senator Allen will be in the November runoff for the insurance commissioner position. He's currently in second in the primary to Jane Kim, a Democrat. And Assembly member Mike Gibson will be advancing in the runoff against another Democrat for the Board of Equalization's District 3 seat. A more detailed review can be found in the NPA report, which has been shared as a handout. Next slide, please. Just as an update on the state budget, on May 14th, Governor Newsom released the May budget revise. This included $25 million in one-time funding for the Healthy Rivers and Landscapes for the Bay Delta Water Quality Control Plan. And it also included $77 million for Prop 1 rollover funding. So this was funding that was left over from Prop 1. And so included in that $77 million is 12.5 for water recycling, 5.2 for groundwater cleanup, and $4 million for stormwater projects. And just as a reminder, June 15th is the constitutional deadline to pass the budget bill. And so and that's today. And so we'll be keeping an eye out for any news. Next slide, please. So the next update, Governor Newsom announced in a press release that DWR had received biological opinions from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the National Marine Fisheries Service for the proposed Delta Conveyance Project. This is an important milestone that marks the completion of the Endangered Species Act process and brings the state one step closer to completing the complex state and federal pre-construction planning and permitting process for Delta Conveyance Project. Just as a reminder, Delta Conveyance Project will come back locally for local funding decisions in the future. Next slide, please. Just wanted to provide a brief list of noteworthy bills. All of these bills, with the exception of 1893, AB 1893, which was held, are continuing or are, apologies. Aside from AB 1893, which was held, all of these other bills are still active and continue to move forward in the process. A more detailed overview can be found in the NPA report, and staff will continue to engage on some of these bills as appropriate. I'll pause here as this concludes the state portion of the update for any questions before I move on to the federal portion of the update.
I think I've seen any questions, Director Dare, Director Supervisor.
No questions. No questions.
All right, thank you. All right, you can go on, Augustine. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Gray. Yeah, so moving on to the federal portion of the update, have some news regarding congressional funding for West Basin's Mosaic project, or the DCS project. Representative Liu released that he was submitting West Basin's Mosaic project for $750,000 in the fiscal year 27 House Interior EPA Appropriations Bill. This appropriations bill passed out of House Appropriations Committee on June 3rd. The bill awaits House floor action before it would advance to the Senate. In addition, Mosaic has been listed in Senator Schiff's preliminary list of projects statewide for congressionally directed spending. And so staff and VSA will continue to track developments as we go through the appropriations process.
I would just add, Augustine, that the $750,000, that's the most amount that projects were given under this funding group this year. So the project received the most that we could get, which is less than past years, but that's just kind of the reality that we're dealing with. But we did get the maximum amount.
Thanks, Matt. And if we could move on to the next slide, please. Yeah, just on June 10th, the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee held an oversight hearing on Colorado River Basin. including current hydrologic conditions and ongoing negotiations regarding post-2026 operations. Bill Hazenkamp of Metropolitan provided testimony, and some of those takeaways are that the best path forward is one built on broad consensus. A collaborative approach is superior to having courts decide, and to support short-term but keep the door open for long-term agreements in this process. Some of those topics that he discussed was the intentionally created surplus, or ICS program, and also federal funding for implementation of any agreement. Next slide, please. Also, regarding a hearing in DC on May 20th, the House Natural Resources Committee's Subcommittee on Water, Wildlife, and Fisheries held a hearing titled "The Federal Reclamation Program's Next Century." That hearing included outside experts as part of a panel, and some of those experts included Shivaji Deshmukh of Metropolitan Water District and other stakeholders from the reclamation states. Shivaji spoke about the benefits of pure water, specifically in reference to the Colorado River, and how recycling projects are a large partnership effort. The hearing highlighted the opportunity for reclamation to allow partners to assume greater responsibility for managing construction and maintenance activities on the river or within reclamation states. Next slide, please. And so some more news about the USBR. On June 8th, the Trump administration nominated Audrey Betancourt to be the next USBR commissioner. Betancourt's previous public service includes serving as the chief of the Natural Resources Conservation Service under USDA and Deputy Assistant Secretary of Water and Science overseeing the Department of Interior. She's a third-generation Californian farmer from the Central Valley and has worked for various Western trade organizations throughout her career. It's our understanding that Aqua is working with Western Water Partners on a letter of support for Ms. Betancourt's appointment. And as a reminder, the administration dropped its nominee, Ted Cook, last year, and Scott Cameron has been acting as commissioner since that time. Next slide, please. Just wanted to provide a brief overview of federal legislation that was introduced by Senator Britt and Senator Lujan. And this was the Advancing Water Reuse Act. And just for your information, this is the companion bill to HR 2940, which West Basin is already in support of. And so this bill would establish a 30% investment tax credit to help industries invest in water reuse systems and infrastructure. And so the main proponents of this bill is water reuse and is also backed by a host of other trade associations. Next slide, please. We'll just touch on this briefly, but the fiscal year 27 House Energy and Water and Interior EPA appropriations process, the House Appropriations Committee held their full markup of these spending bills. And on the slide before you are some of the highlights from that markup session. I'll just note for you that there were some significant cuts to funding to programs such as WaterSmart. And so we'll be continuing to track this appropriations process as it unfolds. And finally, the last update is a regulation imposed by the Trump administration. So on May 28th, the OMB issued a proposed regulation on the management and decision-making process regarding federal grants. And so under this proposal, one or more designated senior political appointees must conduct a pre-issuance review of all discretionary grants. And so if implemented, dozens of federal agencies would have to rework how they deliver billions of dollars worth of grants. The regulation is set to take effect on October 1, 2026. That concludes the update, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Madam Chairwoman, did you have any questions?
Uh, Thank you for the presentation. I'm sorry. Director Deere, Director Spivak, do you guys have any questions?
No questions.
All right, no, I don't. Thank you for the presentation. That concludes the legislative report. Can we go to the next item?
Yes, Madam Chair, this brings us to our final information calendar item. It's item 6C. It's our monthly Metropolitan Water District update. And for the presentation, we have Tammy Hurley-High, our Senior Water Policy and Resources Analyst.
Thank you, EJ. So good afternoon, Chair Gray, Member Deere, Director Fahey. So this report summarizes a few updates on programs, which include the Camp for Water Assessment, the Proposition 4 Water Recycling Funding Program, metropolitan activities in the Northern Sierra Nevada watershed, and we'll conclude with an update on the current water supply conditions. So we have the PowerPoint slide that will begin on page 50 of the committee packet to help guide the report. First off, for the Camp for Water assessment, last month, staff presented a report to the board on the Camp for Water implementation strategy on assessment for proposed projects, and they presented a working memorandum 11. So working memorandum 11 provides an overview of the progress to date, the lessons learned, and upcoming steps in developing low regret options to move forward under the adaptive management process. So individual project assessments include the Pure Water Southern California program, Sites Reservoir, and the Delta Command project. This slide shows the initial low regret recommendations for projects that can address the risk. One is to invest in operational resilience through increasing capital improvement programs, improving system flexibility to effectively distribute available supplies, planning and development of new supply and storage projects, imported supply resilience, and enhanced flexible supply programs. So at this initial stage of the Camp for Water implementation, the low regret actions are more focused on evaluating the planning and the design rather than the implementation of the projects. And Metropolitan will continue pursuing low regret investments that maintain flexibility and provide benefits across a range of scenarios. Metropolitan staff will compile a board support information for the board to consider towards the end of this year. Next slide, please. So with respect to Proposition 4, the Water Recycling Funding Program, last month, the board adopted a resolution in support of an application for Proposition 4 under the State Water Resources Control Board Water Recycling Funding Program for the direct potable reuse testing facility improvements. So as you know, a new testing facility is proposed for the Pure Water project to include direct potable reuse. And Metropolitan is applying for funds of up to $15 million to support the equipment, procurement, design, and construction of these facilities. Metropolitan is evaluating DPR to implement either through raw or treated water augmentation. And if awarded, staff will use Proposition 4 funding to advance activities related to the DPR testing improvements. Next slide, please. So with respect to the Northern Sierra Nevada watershed activities, Metropolitan staff released the 2025 annual restoration report for the source watersheds of the State Water Project in Northern California. So as the largest contractor of the State Water Project, Metropolitan directly relies on these watersheds and their health. In 2024, the board had authorized funding for 3 pilot investigations associated with forest restoration programs. And the overarching goals of these projects are to reduce wildfire risk and improve watershed resiliency through activities such as forest thinning, prescribed fires, meadow restoration, and more. So the annual report details initial results for work completed in water year 2025 and estimates for the 2026 season. including water volume from reduced evapotranspiration, wildfire risk reduction, and more. So Metropolitan staff are working with partners to evaluate the benefits of these pilot investigations and to develop a business case to support the board's consideration of potential future investments. Next slide, please. Here is a list of meetings that are remaining for this month in June, on June 23rd. Next slide, please. So with respect to the water supply conditions, here's a look at the charts that Metropolitan staff continuously updates. The Northern Sierra snowpack is at 0%. Snowpack peaked early on February 24th. The Northern Sierra precipitation shows a heavy amount of precipitation in December and then again in April. For the State Water Project, DWR had announced a final allocation for contracting agencies at 45% of requested supplies, which is up from 30%. Lake Oroville storage is currently at 97% of total capacity and 119% of normal. Earlier this year, Lake Oroville reached the capacity and DWR was managing the reservoir under flood control releases. And then moving on to the Colorado River, for the upper Colorado River Basin, the snowpack is below levels that are compared to 2002, which was the lowest on record. The snowpack peaked early in March, and this year's extremely hot and dry spring conditions resulted in early snow melt. For Lake Mead, the elevation just recently dropped below the level 2 shortage trigger of 1,050 feet in elevation. It is now at 1,047 feet in elevation. Lake Powell, the reservoir is 24% full. And USDR reclamations, their April 24-month study forecasted Lake Powell to be only 15% of normal through July 2026. As a result of that report, Reclamation announced plans to help stabilize Lake Powell's elevation. So the operations are planned to release 2.4 million acre feet from upstream reservoirs into Lake Powell through April 2027. In addition, Reclamation is reducing releases from Lake Powell into Lake Mead from 7.48 million acre feet down to 6 million acre feet through September 2026. So together, these actions are expected to increase Lake Powell's elevation to at least 3,500 feet by April 2027. And with respect to Metropolitan Supply, they have accumulated record high storage with supplies of 3.9 million acre feet for dry year storage and 750,000 acre feet for emergency storage. So that wraps up this update, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if there are any questions, we're happy to answer. Otherwise, that brings us to closed session, of which there is no closed session today.
We've concluded our agenda.
Yes, that concludes the information counting. Still with us? Director Gray, can you hear us?
Well, Dr. Gray, it doesn't sound like we're done.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chair.